These three sets of earphones are all fun in their own way, but they do have a few things that set them apart, especially on a sound front. But before I speak about how these sound, let's jump into how these are built. I wish all three of these had matte finishes, but sadly only one of them gets this look. The OnePlus most evidently looks the most premium here thanks to the matte finish they've chosen to put on the case. It does have a metallic look to it, whereas the OPPO and Realme cases come with glossy finishes and have shown and will show even more scratches over time. These kind of cases will need covers if you don't want them getting scratched and scuffed. The Realme does have its branding on the top of the lid, which is a nice look, but it's much like its previous generation, so it doesn't look new, whereas the OPPO does have a newer design compared to its previous generation, with the brand name on the front of the case and the lid having a Thanos-like chin design. The OPPO and Realme's earphones designs are carried over from the last generations, but are a tad bit smaller, so don't cause as much discomfort for my left ear like the previous ones did. The OPPO earbuds do have a glossy finish, with the touch area having a light indentation, and it also has a matte finish to this area. The Realme has a pearlescent matte finish on the stems, which does look premium and doesn't have a marking for its touch area. It's just on the higher up section of the stem, and the OnePlus has an almost mirror-like finish on its stems, which is a terrific fingerprint magnet, and the touch area does have a matte finish to it. All these earphones ear tips have a meshing, so should protect the inner meshing from collecting dirt and grime over a longer period of time. And these are super simple to remove and rinse under running water to keep them clean. If you do plan on getting caught in the rain or using these in the gym, you should be fine since the OPPO has an IP55 rating, the Realme has an IPX5 rating, and the OnePlus has an IP55 rating, much like the OPPO. All these earphones come with Bluetooth version 5.3, have multi-device pairing, active noise cancelling, and also have their own app support. The OnePlus and OPPO both are supported via the Hey Melody app, which has come a very long way since when it first launched, and you can control all the finer aspects of these earphones from the app, whereas the Realme does get its own app, which is the Realme Link app. Its layout is much the same as the Hey Melody app, and you can also control a lot from within this app as well. If you'd like to know how these apps function in detail, feel free to watch my in-depth reviews on the earphones. When it comes to their response time, the OPPO has a fairly respectable latency of just 47 milliseconds. The OnePlus Buds 3 does come in at 94 milliseconds, which is claimed by OnePlus themselves, and I think anything below 100 is fairly respectable. But the Realme Buds Air 5 Pro comes with a 40 millisecond response time, which is the quickest of the lot. Now, if you also do want to see a latency demo, I do have these in my in-depth reviews for all of these earphones, so you can have a look at them. I will leave their links down in the description below. When it comes to the active noise cancelling on all these earphones, all of them are very good performers, honestly, when it comes to the active noise cancelling. Now, OnePlus and OPPO do claim to reduce noises up to 49 decibels, whereas the Realme does claim that it reduces up to 50 decibels. Now, apart from all the claims that they make on paper, let me tell you how they perform in the real world, because there are slight differences between how they do perform with their ANC on their maximum mode. So one thing I did do is I picked up a little desk fan recently to keep me cool during the summer. I did put the fan on its maximum mode, and I did put all the earphones onto their maximum mode of active noise cancelling as well, just to see where the differences are. Now, the thing is, when it comes to the OPPO, it does a good job of reducing droning noises from fan motors, AC motors. I'm close to a busy street, so all of the engine noises that go on outside of my studio, it does a pretty good job of. But where it does lack is there is a higher frequency that does bleed in with the OPPO even on their max mode. But when you shift over to the OnePlus and the Realme, the higher frequency range that bleeds in with the OPPO just goes quiet. I think they've got a wider band of active noise cancelling that's governing how much noise gets in. So I'd say when it comes to the three of these, the OnePlus and the Realme come fairly close. But where the main difference is that the Realme does have an option to switch on wind noise reduction within the app. The OnePlus doesn't get that option. So if you plan on using any of these earphones outdoors, the Realme does give you that option. Now, the OPPO does have a wind noise reduction that's on all the time. It is part of its algorithm to eliminate wind noises. But I'd say just because it lets in that little bit of noise in the higher range, if you want absolute silence with droning noises, the Realme is the way to go. Now, all these earphones do come with microphones that govern the active noise cancelling to help reduce all that droning noise, but the same microphones also do contribute towards eliminating noises around you for its environmental noise cancelling for whenever you want to take phone calls. And if you do want to know how your voice would sound carried over to your recipient in a busy setting, there really is only one way to show you how. So I'm calling you from the usual busy street where I do all of my call tests from, just to give you a sense of how much noise all these earphones are going to be battling. And as you can see, there are a lot of two-wheelers, four-wheelers and some trucks going on this road. So you might get the occasional pressure horn as well. And over my left shoulder, there is some construction work going on as well. So I have been on my camera microphone all this time. And I will switch over to the OPPO Enco Air 3 Pro right about
now. So this is the overall vocal tonality you can expect to carry over to your recipients whenever you're on any phone calls with them. OPPO has been kind of secretive about how many microphones this set of earphones has. So I suspect that it should have at least two to have any form of environmental noise cancelling. It should have more data points instead of just the one microphone to be able to isolate your voice over all the noise. So this has been how the OPPO Enco Air 3 Pro will sound. And I'll switch over to the OnePlus Buds 3 right about now. So this is the overall vocal tonality you can expect to carry over with the OnePlus Buds 3. Of course, it's got all sorts of things it has to battle with, including that pressure horn that just went by. But now all of these earphones, one thing to keep in mind is I have them all on their maximum active noise cancelling mode. So I presume that having maximum noise cancelling and the environmental noise algorithm will put a certain amount of strain on the algorithm. At least that's what I've seen with some earphones in the past with my in-depth reviews. So if you do want to see how it handles its active noise cancelling while I toggle through the different modes, you can check that out on the in-depth review, which I will leave down in the description below. And this has been the OnePlus Buds 3 call demo, and I'll switch over to the Realme Buds Air 5 Pro right about now. So this is the Realme Buds Air 5, and you'll be the best judge to see whether or not this sounds better than the previous two demos with the OPPO and the OnePlus, because you are sitting in the reviewer seat right now. This is how your recipient is going to be hearing your overall vocal tonality. Now, no doubt, this is the worst kind of situation you can be in a very busy setting, a very busy environment. Expect to have this kind of noise around you if you go on a walk or a run near a main road. So there you have it. This has been the Realme Buds Air 5 Pro call demo along with the other two. So I hope these demos have given you a better understanding of these earphones, and I will see you back at the studio.
On a sound front, these earphones have a slew of different drivers. So I'm going to read it off to tell you so I don't miss anything. The OnePlus Buds 3 has a dual dynamic driver setup, with one being a 10.4mm woofer and the other being a 6mm tweeter, which is quite impressive. Then the Realme Buds Air 5 Pro has a dual driver as well, and it comes with an 11mm dynamic driver and a 6mm planar tweeter, which, there you go, is a different kind of driver. And of course, the OPPO Enco Air 3 Pro comes with a dynamic driver, and it's a 12.4mm driver. So this does come in with the largest driver, but it has a single driver doing everything. Then coming back to the OnePlus, it has a frequency response of 15 Hz all the way up to 40,000 Hz. The Realme Buds Air 5 Pro has a frequency response of 20 Hz to 40,000 Hz, and the OPPO also has a frequency response of 20 Hz all the way up to 40,000 Hz. Now, when it comes to the overall codec support, there is a slight difference again, mainly with the OnePlus, because the OnePlus Buds 3 supports SBC, AAC and LHDC, whereas the Realme Buds Air 5 Pro and the OPPO both support SBC, AAC and the LDAC codec for high resolution music. On a volume front, the OPPO can get loud, but when compared to the other two, it is on the softer side, because when you put all the volumes at the same level, the OPPO is considerably softer than the other two. The next set of earphones followed up with this is the Realme Buds Air 5 Pro, because it is fuller, it is bigger sounding at the same volume compared to the OPPO. And of course, the loudest set of earphones here comes at no surprise. It is the OnePlus Buds 3. So if you're more into louder listening and you just want big and louder sound, the OnePlus Buds 3 is the loudest of the lot. When it comes to their soundstage, all these earphones stage very similarly. They are mass market earphones. They're not exactly audiophile grade. Even on the high-res mode, there's only so much they can do. but when it comes to the spatial audio in particular, all of these have spatial audio or 3D audio. They're called different things, but they do pretty much the same thing. When this is on, it is fun to use this mode when you're gaming or watching movies, because it does give you slightly more, a slightly wider sense of what you're consuming. It's not sitting in your head as tightly as with it off. So I'd say, I mean, if you enjoy movies and gaming, it makes a lot of sense to switch this on. But when it comes to playing the music, it's not as well defined, it's not as well structured, and it loses some roundedness. So listening to music isn't as fun with the 3D modes on or the spatial audio modes on. I'd say stick to using that mode only for movies and games. On an imaging front, all of these are yet again much the same. In fact, the OnePlus Buds 3 and the Realme Buds Air 5 Pro do come very similar to their overall detail recovery. Maybe the Realme might be slightly sharper in its overall detail, but I'd say they're both very similar. But this is where the OPPO edges them out slightly. When it comes to the finer details, its edges when it comes to being able to image and pick out certain nuances is a bit sharper than the other two sets of earphones. So if you do like a little more nuance or a little more detail in your music, I'd say the OPPO is more the way to go. When it comes to the high frequencies, all these earphones handle this range slightly differently. The OPPO does have a good amount of enthusiasm here, but does have a very controlled delivery, which I find quite enjoyable. The Realme isn't as enthusiastic as the OPPO here, which does make it seem as if it's missing the richness that the OPPO has. The OnePlus is the in-between here. It's a little crisper in the delivery in this range than the Realme. It still isn't as defined and sharpened as the OPPO is. What's nice about all their tunings is that they aren't high frequency exaggerated, so won't cause any listening fatigue over longer listening sessions. Listening to the Goo Goo Dolls perform Black Balloon, the OnePlus does seem to not want to perform here. There are fine details in the background with soft violins which don't come to you as clearly as the OPPO carries this range. The Realme handles this range well, but again, the finer nuances are lost here. So if you're into crisper and better defined highs, the OPPO does this with more purpose than the OnePlus and Realme. Now when it comes to the mid frequencies, all these earphones have slightly different characters here. As much as I like how the OPPO handles this range compared to the other two, its mids do seem to sound thinner and not as rounded. The OnePlus does have a slightly better body in this range, but OnePlus has focused more on the lower range than the mids, and when it comes to the Realme, it does handle this range well with rounded mids without exaggerated higher mids, so it doesn't get sibilant. The Realme does have better rounded lower mids compared to the OPPO for sure, but the OPPO does have sharper separation and detail recovery here between vocals and instruments. The OnePlus isn't as focused on separation and detail recovery here compared to the other two earphones, but it's a good enough performer for a casual listener. Listening to Rob Thomas perform Can't Help Me Now, the OnePlus doesn't come with a rounded delivery but has some more body here than the OPPO, since its bass boosted tuning does give it a little more boom in the lower mids. The OPPO does seem anemic here compared to these two sets of earphones, but the Realme does push through as having the most natural sounding lower mids here. Lower frequencies is where there is a more noticeable difference between these three earphones. Quite simply put, the OPPO just doesn't cut it here compared to the Realme and OnePlus straight out of the box. It's more focused toward being a truer deliverer of this range than giving you an exaggerated response. But once you throw it into its bass boost mode in the EQ setting, it does get a lot more fun sounding. It does get a pure bass mode which does sound like it's clipping a bit, whereas the deep bass mode is a lot more fun and better defined without clipping and boosting the sub bass region. Then when you switch over to the OnePlus straight out of the box, it's more about bass enthusiasm than anything else. It is bigger sounding than the other two on their default audio modes and does get even bigger sounding with its bass EQ mode on. Listening to Calvin Harris and Rihanna perform This Is What You Came For, it's very clear that the OPPO doesn't quite hold its ground against the OnePlus and Realme with bass performance, even with its EQ mode on bass boost. The Realme handles this range with its bass boost almost as if the bass is a separate entity. It sounds disconnected from the mid-range, whereas the OnePlus isn't as disconnected from the mids here. It does seem better balanced together. So to sum up, overall on a build front, I'm more of a fan of the OnePlus because of its overall case design. It's got that nice matte finish. It looks very premium, in fact, compared to the other two that are just glossy. Glossy, just I've never liked it. I've never grown to like it. I thought I would over time, but I just don't like it. It's the matte finish which is the way to go because it just looks better in the long run. Now, when it does come to the earphones in particular, the OPPO and Realme do have a nice finish. Even though the OPPO is glossy, it will very rarely pick up scratches and scuffs because it's sitting in the case or it's sitting in your ear. It's not really being dragged and put around or picking up scratches like the case is. So The earphones on the OPPO still look great even after all this time. I've had it for quite a while. In fact, I need to do a long-term review on it. And I like the matte finish, the pearlescent finish on the Realme. It does look premium on the stem. The OnePlus ear stems is where I don't like the finish, because every time I put them into the case, I can just see my fingerprints all over it. So I usually wipe it down, because I don't like opening the case and seeing anything, greasy and slimy when I reach out for earphones. So that's one thing to keep in mind. If you're somebody who doesn't like earphones that pick up a lot of fingerprints or grease, that's one thing to remember, because the OnePlus it's a magnet for fingerprints. On a feature front, these earphones have everything you really need. In fact, I think the only thing that they're really missing might just be wireless charging. Now, I remember one of the first few Realme products I reviewed when I first started my channel. It must have set me back by about 2,500. It had wireless charging in it. So I'm surprised they've not continued that tradition with the Realme at least. But there you have it. I guess a lot of people don't really want that feature, but it would have been nice to have that feature in particular. They all do multi-device pairing fairly well. I can't really complain, because they have come a long way. I remember when the OnePlus Buds Z2, you had to press and hold one side to latch onto the other device. Even if it was ringing, it wouldn't do the auto handover. These do the auto handover, so it does it fairly well. But the one thing that really sets the OnePlus apart from the other two earphones right now that I like is it has a volume slider. It's not necessarily, everyone's got volume tap controls now, which is nice, but having a slider is more natural, because then it's one more tap. You don't have to remember. This is a natural movement. So up or down on either bud will control your volume. So even if you give this to an older parent, they're not going to be trying to remember what you told them about it. Just an up and down slide it's universal, instead of even a pinch. In fact, there are other companies that had slide controls who have shifted over to pinch, which I think is crazy, because this is the way to do it. This is how you control volume. So overall, that's where I think the OnePlus for me is a more enjoyable set of earphones for casual using and consumption, because even if I go on a walk, it's easy to just control volume, which I think is the way to go forward with all earphones. And when it comes to the active noise cancelling of all these earphones, I'd say honestly all of them are really good performers, with the OPPO just about missing out because it's not able to eliminate some of those higher frequencies. So like I did mention in the review, I did put a little desk fan on my desk and have it blowing toward me, and the OPPO was letting in that higher frequency. So while I was writing the script, it was a little more distracting. The OnePlus and Realme, on the other hand, are able to get that higher range very well. So I'd say both of these are superior than the OPPO for certain. But the Realme does have a toggle button for the wind noise reduction within the app. So it might have a slight edge over the OnePlus. So if you are using it outdoors, I think it might make a little more sense to go for the Realme. And on a sound front, well, to be honest, I think my decision won't go with the masses, but I love the OPPO because I do prefer more detail. I do prefer more separation. I want finer detail in my music, even if I'm listening to it casually. And the OPPO does that. It does encapsulate that overall emotion. And then the bass isn't as enthusiastic. It's not as emphatic as the other two, but it's just about right. It's just about natural. It's not trying to loosen up your earwax. It's not trying to impress you with heavy bass. It's very comfortable in its own skin. It knows what it's doing. And I'd say the OPPO is directed more towards somebody who likes more of a natural sound in his overall music. So if you're that person, you can go for the OPPO. When you move over to the Realme, Realme has actually done a terrific job with these earphones because it's a huge upgrade over the last set of earphones that they did come out with, the Realme Buds Air 3, and it's a massive evolution over those. And I'd say that overall on a sound front alone, they've done a pretty good job. The highs are soft enough there where they won't hurt your ear like the previous generation was. The mid-range is nice and rounded. I didn't expect Realme to produce something that sounded this good in the mids. The bass is enthusiastic. It is good fun. In fact, it can stand up to the OnePlus most of the time. Even when you switch it onto the bass boost mode, it's almost as if it gets a separate subwoofer because it focuses its bass on the sub-low frequencies. So it sounds like a separate entity altogether. Whereas when it's on its other bass mode compared to the deep bass, it does start to clip a little. It's not as well defined with its bass. In fact, I didn't mention what the bass was with the OPPO. When the OPPO's on the bass boost mode, it's terrific fun. In fact, I prefer it on the bass boost mode because it sounds a little better balanced. So That's the OPPO. But anyway, moving on back to the Realme, it is a good performer all in all. In fact, it comes very close to the OPPO's performance. There's a very slight difference between these two earphones, to be honest. And then moving on to the OnePlus, they've made it very clear what they're about. When it came to the OnePlus Buds Z2 and even these, the first thing that I thought was, this is for the bass enthusiast. Whoever's listening to this wants heavy bass. They want big body. They want skull vibrating bass. They want their earwax to dislodge. It's sometimes too much for me. I myself am not a bass enthusiast, but I can see a lot of people really going for this. The OnePlus Buds are not at all bothered about detail like the Realme and the OPPO is. The OnePlus has more of a merging element going on in all three ranges. Highs, mids, lows, everything merges. Its separation isn't as good as both the other earphones. So it's not for, definitely not for the audiophile, but I think it's terrific for casual listening because it's not too bright in the highs. It's okay in the mids. It is a little more forward in the mids compared to the Realme, but the bass is huge. It is big. It is, I think, there were times where I thought I was listening to a set of headphones. So the OnePlus overall, I think a lot of people will prefer that. A lot of the masses will prefer it because of how big and heavy it sounds in the bass. So anyway, I think that all of these earphones are terrific in their own elements and they cater towards slightly different people. And of course, if you've heard how I described it in the chapter about sound, you know which one's for you. But let's come to the price of these. At the time of recording this video, the OPPO does have a maximum retail price of 7,999, but you can make these yours for 4,995. The Realme has a maximum retail price of 7,999 as well, but you can make it yours for 4,499. So that is a little more affordable. The OnePlus has an MRP of 6,499, but you can buy it for 5,498 rupees. So all of these, I'd say, are pretty good value for money. It just depends on which one suits you best. Honestly, I'd say they're all good to go because these are all BBK earphones and they should be long lasting enough. I've usually found the OPPOs to last me a very long time for that matter. Even Realmes have lasted me ages, and the OnePlus Buds Z2 I have is also well over a year old. So I'd say these are long-term products and all in all, they are super value for money. So I hope you found this video helpful and informative, and I do hope that I've helped you make some sort of purchase decision. If you would like to help support the channel, I'm sure you know exactly how to. But of course, thank you for tuning into Paul's POV for some sound advice.